Good morning, everybody, and happy Wednesday to you. I'm Rob Evans. Welcome to Daybreak Plus. We're breaking down all the news you may have missed overnight and digging deep into what actually matters to you. And coming up, we're talking all about the UT basketball team, men's and women's. The men open up tonight against Xavier. We're going to talk about that in about 7 or 8 minutes. But first, have you noticed all the smoke in the air over the past couple of days? Over the weekend, wildfires burning Gillespie County, but the smoke came here to Austin. Look at some of the video from Saturday of smoke that was moving into Travis County. We have some video there coming up. The U.S. Air Quality Index, look at that right over the Sometimes Islands there. The U.S. Air Quality Index reported the highest pollutant levels in 30 days. They labeled the air unhealthy for sensitive groups. Subranium Ruhan is a local pulmonologist, and we talked to him, and he's starting to see a lot of health complications from this smoke. Take a listen.
Those particles are really quite small, and they pass through bandanas, surgical masks, dust masks that a lot of folks who work outside use, and they get into your lungs and can create a lot of problems.
Now, the group most at risk include people with underlying lung disease, asthma, heart disease. However, when the air quality is very poor, I mean, look at that right there, everybody can be at risk. Now, if wildfire smoke is in the air, doctors recommend staying inside if you can. Avoid strenuous activity outside. Make sure your air filters in your homes and your cars are up to date. Make sure they're clean. Now, to stay up to date on the fire danger, you can always download the KVUE News app. It is available in the App Store and Google Play Store. And moving on to politics right now, today the Texas Senate is expected to vote to advance a bill to the House. It would bring religion inside public school classrooms. Now, this is Senate Bill number 10, and it would require all K-12 public school classrooms to display the 10 Commandments. The text must be clear enough to read for a person with what they call average vision anywhere in the classroom. The posters could be either bought by the districts or they could be donated. 7:03 right now, taking a live look at our Zach Theater camera and a tech giant. So you see the sail building right there on the far right of your screen is lit up in kind of green there. Well, the tech giant is finally moving into the so-called sail tower in downtown Austin near Lady Bird Lake. Leaders from Google confirmed they are finally moving into that. There you see it there, 35-story skyscraper on West 2nd Street later this year. Now this is 2025. Google has held the lease for that building since 2019, but it has remained empty, that big, beautiful building. And you know how expensive it is to live downtown, right? Could you imagine what they could have done for the last 6 years? Whew. Google's lease, by the way, runs through 2038. And today, hundreds of flight attendants are planning to picket outside of Austin's airports. If you're heading to fly out or picking someone up, you're going to see this. United Airlines flight attendants are taking part in a nationwide demonstration. They say they are underpaid. And with the United reporting record profits last year, the company, they say, needs to negotiate new pay for unionized workers. The protest set to start at 11 o'clock this morning. And Barton Springs Pool is back open. Heck, it's almost warm enough to get out there, right? The pool was closed for 2 weeks for maintenance. The crews are still working on the Barton Springs bath house renovation project. That's replacing plumbing, drainage systems, repairs, structural repairs. It started last February, and crews are hoping to wrap it up by this summer. It'll be very nice, though, once they get done. And time running out now to fill out your bracket for the NCAA tournament. Governor Greg Abbott has already done his bracket, and he picked, no bias here, 3 teams from the Lone Star States to go to the Final Four in San Antonio. Texas is not one of them. Texas A&M, Texas Tech, and the University of Houston. He does have Texas, his alma mater, losing to Kentucky early on. He picks Houston and A&M going all the way to the national title game, and Houston to win it all, its first ever national championship in basketball. And we're going to go in depth about the UT men and women in just a few minutes. But for now, it's 7:05. Let's get a look at the weather and traffic. Grace doing double duty for us right now. And we've been talking about that smoke. Has it cleared away yet, Grace?
Oh yeah, we've been dealing with some dusty conditions, and we'll also have the potential for more dust as we head into the day today. So be aware of that. And it has at times been taking us down to the unhealthy for sensitive groups category for our not our allergies, our air quality. So be aware of that as you head through the day today. We're already starting to see those westerly winds move their way through. Now 66 degrees at the airport and Camp Mabry. That's okay for temperatures out there. If you're heading out the door in the next few moments, you'll see 81% for that humidity. However, that is going to be dropping and dropping fast as this cold front starts to make its way through. So we still have a couple of southerly winds stuck on that east side, but most of that north and westerly wind has started to filter into the hill country and now moving across the I-35 corridor. You can see it a little bit better on that relative humidity map. Wow, look at single digits for those values in Llano and around 10% for Fredericksburg. Certainly dry. We even have some negative degree dew points out in the further hill country and down towards the Edwards Plateau right now. In Del Rio, it's -4 right now. So very, very dry air making its way in here. And of course, gusty winds, and the winds and the low humidity is why we have our red flag warning in place for today and why we have a weather impact alert, issued for our Wednesday as well. This goes through 9 p.m. So this is an all-day event that will be dealing with high winds across our area. So again, strong winds, low humidity. What you need to do today is be aware of any outdoor burning and make sure you're not doing anything to cause a spark out there, because what can cause a spark probably will. And of course, we'll be stuck in a dangerous situation if that does happen. Okay, so for today, our outlook is in the extreme category. That's another reason why we've issued the weather impact alert day, because, all of our conditions are really exacerbating what's going on today. However, tomorrow we can be thankful for a calmer day across the region. We'll also see some cooler temperatures out there, which I think a lot of people will like too. Starting off the day on Thursday, some of us may be in the 30s tomorrow, so make sure you don't put away that jacket. We'll be rebounding temperatures here in no time through this weekend. 87 degrees for Sunday. Out ahead of another disturbance that's moving through. Only a 20% chance for maybe some rain, maybe one thunderstorm or two. We'll have to track that as we head through the rest of this week. All right, let's get a check on traffic for this morning. There really wasn't too much happening until about 20 minutes ago. Our map is showing slowdowns, especially for Buda and of course for Maynard too. Those are kind of our trouble spots around town. And we do have some crashes, so let's check in on that. On the north side of town, right outside of the hospital there, Seton Center Parkway and Research Boulevard northbound, we have a crash right there. Doesn't seem to be causing too many issues, but of course be aware of that. And then down towards the other side of town, we did have a stalled vehicle on the northbound lane of I-35 over towards MLK Boulevard there, but that has since been cleared. We do have one crash also, Hedgewood Drive, Hartwood Drive, and that is in not a major roadway, but just in a neighborhood there. Also coming in from Buda and Onion Creek, we kind of just have our normal run-of-the-mill stop-and-go conditions there. Back to
All right, Grace, thank you very much. In your KVUE crime files today, the Lee County Sheriff's Office is one step closer to finally identifying the remains of a young child found in a trash bag near Giddings. Now, in case you haven't heard about this and wondering what we're talking about, this mystery actually dates back about 50 years. But as KVUE's Yvonne Nav reports, it's a mystery that modern technology might just be able to help solve. Take a look.
September 7th, 1975. It was a nice sunny day. The family was having a picnic at a roadside park off Highway 77 near the Fayette County line when the dad spotted a trash bag under a tree.
And inside the bag was a small baby, decomposed. It was wrapped in Buster Brown clothes.
Former Lee County Sheriff Rodney Meyer remembers that day well. This old newspaper clipping shows him working the scene. He was a deputy then.
There was nothing to go on. Yeah, nothing back then.
Fast forward to 2023 and a changing of the guard, so to speak, when a new sheriff took over.
I wasn't alive when this happened.
And that sparked up an important conversation.
When I took office, I had a meeting with Sheriff Meyer. We talked about old cases, and this cold case came up.
We went over as much stuff as I could remember from the case, 50 years ago.
Sheriff Durenberger now believes the remains are that of a 4-year-old child. The skull had brown hair and 3 puncture wounds. The remains were initially sent here to DPS, then to the Oklahoma Medical Examiner's Office.
It's been there for years and years in a box somewhere.
That is until the end of last year, when Sheriffs Meyer and Durenberger retrieved the remains and sent them off to the University of North Texas for DNA analysis. Meanwhile, in Giddings,
This is a diagram Deputy Meyer prepared back then.
investigators recreated the crime scene using Meyer's hand-drawn map from 1975. They also used a bluebonnet electric map to find a nearby power pole and tree that still exists today. And now, with a DNA sample, the hope is genealogy can finally help track down a family member.
They did the best they could with the tools they had, and we do the same thing today. We just have different tools.
It's sad because here we have a small child and we don't know who the family is.
This child was abducted, was kidnapped, was a known family member, was traveling through, or people that lived here. We have no idea.
That was Yvonne Nava. Now, it's not clear how long it's going to take to get the results back from the lab or if genealogy could even uncover the child's identity. But law enforcement and law officers in Lee County say they are hoping this is one mystery that will be solved. Of course, if you know anything about this, you can call your local authority. All right, moving on right now at 7:12, and the Blue Ghost Lunar Lander, you know, the one we've been talking about, developed and guided by Cedar Park-based Firefly Aerospace, such a cool thing. Well, it has done its job, and it now is resting. It has fallen silent after more than 2 weeks on the moon. Check this out, though. The lander captured these stunning sunset photos on the moon before it shut off. Scientists gave their final update on the mission, saying it's highly unlikely that the Blue Ghost will turn back on after experiencing the cold or the dark side of the moon. This is actually solar powered. We talked to one of the engineers a week or so ago, and it was built to actually only last 2 weeks. Now, the solar day is a lunar day is 2 weeks. So in 2 more weeks, when the sun comes back, maybe, they say it's unlikely, but maybe it'll come back to life. And that lander right there, he told me, is going to last tens of thousands of years on the moon. Pretty cool. They did a great job doing what they did. All right, let's talk basketball, shall we? Deep dive now to the NCAA tournament, and the journey to the Final Four is in San Antonio, or to San Antonio rather, begins tonight in Dayton, Ohio, and that's where the Texas men's basketball team will take on Xavier in the first four, the play-in game to the NCAA tournament. After a strong run in the SEC tourney, the men's basketball team did somehow make it. An at-large bid, a lot of people were shocked. The SEC set a record 14 teams to the tournament. That is insane. Texas hoping to stay in it for the long haul. There will likely be a lot of Xavier fans at the game, though, since Dayton's only an hour from their home in Cincinnati. The first four, or play-in game, will tip off around 8 p.m. tonight. The winner will take on Illinois in the first round Saturday. But let's dive in right now into the men's and women's NCAA tournament. All right, we wanted to talk to the expert right now, and the sports director here at KVUE, Jeff Jones, joins us. And welcome to the KVUE Daybreak Plus studio, by the way. First time.
First time, and we'll take the people behind the curtain. Rob, you and I were just talking. I haven't been in here to do anything like this before, and it's wowing me with all the different camera angles and everything. Y'all got a nice setup.
They're fancy.
You're fancy.
They
This
did
is
it
your
right.
thing.
I just sit in front of the mic. But this is a big time for basketball fans, but UT fans especially. First, before we get to March Madness, how in the world, and we're happy for Texas, how did Texas get in at that large bid?
Yeah, when I heard the word how, I knew exactly what you were going to ask. And it's a fair question. Yeah. And actually, Texas has tied a record, an all-time March Madness record, and it's not necessarily the one you want to tie. They're 15 losses, the most for an at-large team to ever make the tournament.
Wow.
15 losses. So that question is a common one and a fair one. How did they get in? And really what's behind that is the fact that the scales have changed recently, and there's more weight given to big schools from great conferences, and this year's SEC was historically great. Yeah. And so last year and in previous years where we might see some smaller schools steal the spot that Texas stole, Texas gets it now, and it's really because they're in the SEC.
You got to feel bad, though, for some of the teams that worked so hard and it had 4 losses, 5 losses, and they're sitting out after Selection Sunday. I mean, seen it before.
Do I have to feel bad for them?
Well, no, we don't. But
Yeah.
we've been doing sports for a long time, and so those little teams.
Yeah.
sorry, but not sorry. Sorry, not
yeah,
sorry.
yeah. And it is rough for them, especially the teams who played really well during the regular season and then maybe hit one roadblock in the conference tournament, and that loss at the wrong time is what cost them. But selfishly,
Yeah.
I like to cover March Madness, and
Oh.
if Texas gets hot right now, like they have been over the past week or so. Hey, if they can turn that into 3 or 4 wins and, get the KVUE sports team on the road for a Sweet 16
I
run,
see what it is. Okay.
yeah. They're ulterior motives for sure.
Absolutely. That's a great time. And Texas is a great team. They could turn it on at any time. But let's talk about, they got to do the play-in game. They're not even in the tournament, technically, I guess, the way they do it now.
It's weird, right? They're in the field of 68, but not the field of 64. So they do play in that first 4 matchup in Dayton. And so they're an 11 seed, and instead of opening tournament play against a 6 seed, they open tournament play against another 11 seed. They're playing a team, Xavier, from right outside of Dayton. And so you're thinking maybe Texas is at a disadvantage. It's going to be like a road game, but not so fast. Dayton hates Xavier.
Oh, okay.
So today in his press conference, head coach Rodney Terry, I guess yesterday in the press conference, head coach Rodney Terry kind of pleaded to the people of Dayton. He says, I know about your rivalry. Instead of cheering for the guys from down the street who you cheer against for the rest of the year, show up wearing burnt orange and cheer for us.
That is cool.
So, this first 4 matchup, you don't know what the crowd's going to be like, if they're going to be for or against Texas, but Texas does have to earn their way into the first round this year.
How do they match up against Xavier, by the way? Big size-wise, speed-wise especially.
Yeah. Size-wise, Texas has a guy, post player, Caden Cedric, who he can bang with anybody. He's got good height on him. He plays above the rim. And if there is a smaller, kind of slighter post presence, well, Caden can bang with him. And we expect to see something like that against Xavier. We asked the guys, the Longhorns, if this Xavier team reminds them of anyone they played against this year. They said a little Kentucky, a little Vanderbilt. Those are teams that the Longhorns have had success against, have had good wins. Rodney Terry told us maybe the best win of the season actually came recently against Vanderbilt.
So what's it going to take, do you think, for Texas to make a run? Not just win the play-in game, but the actual tournament. What do you think it's going to take to make that run? To, as you think, Final Four maybe to be nice. Maybe it's a little bit
Is that
much.
what I thought? I don't know if Texas...
Sweet 16.
Yeah.
Sweet 16.
I wouldn't mind seeing them in the Sweet 16. And, I haven't finished filling out my bracket, but I go back and forth. Is this Texas team one that's going to go to the round of 32 or to the Sweet 16? So if they're going to hit their peak potential, which is what we're talking about, I think it's because they're going to believe what they're selling to us. And what they're selling to us is that this is a team that's finally healthy, and that's important. They have a lot of veteran guys who they got out of the transfer portal, and they've spent some time on the IR, on the sideline, not playing. Now their team is fully healthy for the first time since non-conference play, and they have a guy named Kendall Weaver, who not a lot of people are talking about, and I get it. He's never going to lead the team in scoring, assists, or rebounds, but he's always going to lead the team in effort, and the team is open about it. When Kendall is on the court, he's giving it his all, and you don't want to be embarrassed by comparison. You don't want to be the guy slacking off when Kendall's out there giving it his all. So the fact that he's out there giving high energy, they tell us that raises everyone's energy level, and you can kind of see it. We saw that through the SEC tournament, and this is a team that looked pretty good in the SEC tournament. They got bounced to Tennessee. Tennessee, the top 2 seed in this year's tournament. So if Texas can go toe-to-toe with teams like that, they might be able to advance to the Sweet 16, or you hinted at something else. I don't know if they have that in them, but they've shown that they can play with the best.
Right, which is fantastic. Now, who do you have picking to win the bracket, by the way? Can I ask you that, or is it too soon?
Yeah, it's all good. So I haven't finished filling it out, but I do know I'm going to pick Auburn to win it all.
Okay.
They're going to be a popular pick this year. They are the #1 overall seed, and just full transparency, I lived in Auburn, Alabama from the time I was 2 until I was 12.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, I just got a soft spot for the Auburn Tigers. We saw them this year. They came to Austin and played in the Moody Center. That was a game. Remember, I said that Texas can play with the best. Auburn was the #1 team in the nation when they came and played in the Moody Center, and they beat Texas, but not by much. This was a 2-possession game late in that game. And so we saw when Texas is up and rolling, they can play with anybody. But when Auburn is playing at their best this year, they have looked like the best team. So they just have to piece that together.
Oh man, it's an exciting time, but we honestly we have to really talk about the women, because Texas women, they were number one for how long, and now they're doing fantastic.
Yes.
What a program! And now they're the number one seed in their bracket as well.
Yeah.
They're on Saturday.
Yeah. And Rob, I got to continue singing your praises, man. All day long, people, when they see me walking around, they want to talk about the tournament. They want to talk basketball. You were the first one to, in the first sentence of our basketball conversation, you said, yeah, the men's team is great, but tell me about the women's team. And I really can't say enough great things about this team. They have a perfect mix of veteran leadership, players who have been 3-year starters, some players who have been starters and key producers here at Texas and at other schools, and they have a young elite talent in Madison Booker. This young woman can play 1 through 4, so that's point guard, shooting guard, small forward, and power forward, and she can succeed at all of those positions. When she enters the WNBA draft, which won't be this year, but in the future when she does, I expect her to be a top 3 or 4 pick. She is a program changer. And when you pair her up with a guy like Vic Schaefer, who knows the X's and O's as well as anyone in the sport, you can get a special run. You'll remember that when Vic Schaefer was here his first 2 seasons, he led the Longhorns to the Elite 8. And those teams, nothing against those teams, but talent-wise,
This is better.
Those teams don't compare. This one's way better, like you said, Rob. So there is no ceiling for this team. There's no team in the nation that this year's Texas Longhorns women's basketball team can't beat. And honestly, if they bring their A game and they catch somebody on the right day, they might end up beating everybody decisively.
Okay, so the only real, though, a little bit of concern is obviously South Carolina, because the last 2 meetups, but they won't meet them until later on, I guess, in the match.
That's right. So we won't see that matchup for the 4th time this year until later in the tournament. And like we said, that they have matched up already 3 times. South Carolina won 2 of those. Texas won 1. Texas proved they can play with South Carolina. They can beat South Carolina. But Texas must bring their A game. If they bring anything less than that, well, it's going to go towards the team that's been there and done that. South Carolina going for their 3rd national championship in the past 4 years.
Texas is in the way, though. I think Texas can do this. What's your pick for the women's side?
Texas Longhorns.
That's it.
I think they're going to do it. Yeah, I really, really do. It's just that mix of talent, leadership, experience, and head coach Vic Schaefer, hammering it home on the X's and O's. And when we talk to this guy, and we have like these Zoom press conferences with him all throughout the season, and I think it's because like it helps his schedule, keeps him efficient. But when we talk to him, they'll be in the middle of like an 11, 12 game win streak, and Coach Schaefer only wants to talk about what's not going right. You can see it on his face. It's not just talk. So he keeps their minds right, their minds focused on improving year round. And I think this is where we see it show up in March.
It sounds like Tom Brady. He's only talking about what goes wrong. He never talks about the good things, Super Bowl wins, talks about the losses. All right, what do we need to know? Is there any surprise teams? Is there anything else that you can think about from March Madness?
Let me see. I think it's just for the casual fans out there, the ones who fill out the men's bracket and try to watch all the men's games until that bracket is busted. Please do not make the mistake of forgetting about the women's side.
Oh, yes.
Because, that sport, that game is on the rise, and the Texas Longhorns are at the forefront of it. It is an excellent product to watch on the court, and if you haven't tuned in all year, right now is the best time to tune in.
And this Saturday, they're going to be home, right?
Yeah. The first 2 rounds, in theory, as long as there's not some massive upset early, the first 2 rounds, they will be at home. If they win both of those, which I expect them to do, they'll play the Sweet 16 and Elite 8 in Birmingham, Alabama, and then move on the Final 4 this year on the women's side in Tampa, Florida.
You want to take a trip to South Florida?
I think so, yeah. Do you have some good places we should hit
I do. I used to live there, so yeah, we'll go
let's
together.
get you on the list there. Let's do it.
Jeff, thanks so much for your time, and
My
welcome
man.
to Daybreak Plus Studio. Come
This
back
is
anytime.
Just so beautiful.
And we've got more from Jeff coming up later this week, talking more women's basketball. But for now, we're leaving you with something to talk about. And the next time your commute on I-35 takes you longer than expected, remember, it could always be worse. Imagine your commute was supposed to be 8 days, but lasted for more than 9 months. That is what happened to 2 NASA astronauts who are finally back on Earth. You see them landing right there in the ocean. Oof. ABC's Nicole D'Antonio is in Washington with the details on their long-awaited return.
They're working very hard.
This morning, a safe return home for two NASA astronauts who splashed down off Florida's Gulf Coast after an extended mission in space.
And splashdown, Crew 9 back on Earth.
NASA's Mission Control in Houston erupting in cheers at this moment as the SpaceX Dragon capsule arrived home with astronauts Sunny Williams and Butch Wilmore safely on board. A recovery team pulling the capsule onto a recovery ship.
We're overjoyed. I watched every crew member come out of the vehicle today. Post-landing, it was great to watch Nick, Sunny, Butch, and Alexander come out of the Dragon and smile and wave as they came out of the vehicle.
The astronauts had been on the International Space Station since last summer after an 8-day stopover stretched into a nearly 9-month mission. Wilmore rejected the idea that they needed to be rescued.
There's many ways to characterize it. Stranded, I don't think, is one of them because we're on the space station. Stuck is not one of them because we're on the space station. Now, had we not made it to the space station, there would have been many adjectives that you could have characterized this by.
NASA said in an emergency scenario, they could have used one of their spacecrafts docked to the station, but were waiting for another crew to relieve them. Wilmore, who has 2 daughters, one in college and another in high school, talked about the toll of being away for so long.
I'm going to miss most of her senior year in high school.
Meanwhile, Williams broke the female record for most time on spacewalks, 62 hours and 6 minutes. Her family filled with pride.
I'm very proud of her for being such a role model.
I think she's inspired a lot of young girls all over the world. I think she's touched a lot of people.
Now, along with Williams and Wilmore, the capsule was also carrying another astronaut and a Russian cosmonaut who took the spacecraft to the International Space Station in September. Nicole D'Antonio, ABC News, Washington.
Yeah, they weren't stuck. They planned for it. They had a backup plan just in case, and it worked. All right, so that's it for Daybreak Plus. Let us know what you would like to talk about, though. Message us at 512-459-9442. Tomorrow, with all the recent talk about UFOs and the government releasing videos from military pilots, we are looking at your responses to the question, do you believe in life outside our world, aliens, UFOs, unidentified aerial objects, whatever you want to call them, ET? You still have time to message us. Please do. You can also message me on social media at Rob Evans TV on Instagram, Facebook, and X. And stick around because Daybreak continues right here on KVUE+. Goodbye, everybody.